If you have ever lived like this, with a life that keeps getting more convenient, while your mind keeps getting more fragile, then do not be too quick to call yourself weak. A little cold feels unbearable. A little hunger feels unbearable. A small delay feels unbearable. Even 10 quiet minutes with nothing happening can feel like too much. A lot of people are not born fragile. A lot of people have simply been softened by a life with too little resistance. When Elon was 36, he understood this for the first time. His life was not bad. In many ways, it was easier than most. The apartment stayed warm in winter and cool in summer. The car was always close. Food could be delivered. Anything he wanted to know could be found with one tap. His work was acceptable. His income was decent. From the outside, he looked like someone who had entered the modern version of a comfortable life. And yet, something inside him was going soft. Every morning, the first thing he reached for was his phone. Not because something truly urgent was waiting for him, but because his brain wanted sugar before it wanted reality. When he thought about exercising, his mind immediately produced reasons. Too hot, too cold, not today. Tomorrow will work just as well. When pressure appeared, he wanted something instant. Food, scrolling, noise, escape. None of it looked dramatic, but each time he reached for comfort first, something inside him became duller. What unsettled him most was how little discomfort he could now handle. Traffic irritated him, slow internet irritated him, a delayed message irritated him. An order arriving 10 minutes late felt strangely personal. It was as if his whole system had developed a paper-thin skin. A little friction, and he tore. That autumn, he went hiking with an old friend. The man's name was Cale. He was not loud, not preachy, not the kind of person who turned every experience into a lesson, but there was something solid about him. The kind of steadiness that feels like stone after years of wind. The trail was not especially difficult, but the weather changed quickly. At first, the wind picked up. Then the rain began. Mountain rain does not fall politely. It turns the path heavy. The shoes get wet. The clothes stick to the skin. The whole body starts negotiating with discomfort. Elon grew irritated almost immediately. He did not complain much out loud, but inside his mind was already full. Why is it this wet? Why is it this cold? Why is this taking so long? We should not have come. Cale walked ahead of him, not much faster, just steadier. After a while, he looked back and said, "You really do not let yourself be uncomfortable very often, do you?" Elon was about to argue, then realized he could not. Because it was true. He had spent years removing resistance from his life. When the rain got heavier, they stepped under a small shelter beside the trail. It was nothing special. A few old boards, a roof, a fading sign nailed to one side. Cale set down his pack and spoke as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Do you know why so many people now have better living conditions than ever before, and yet feel more fragile than ever? Elon said nothing. Cale pointed first at his own legs, then at the trail outside. If you stop using muscle, it shrinks. If bones stop carrying weight, they weaken. If the immune system never meets resistance, it starts behaving badly. The mind and the will work the same way. If you remove every trace of cold, hunger, waiting, boredom, strain, and difficulty, you do not get freedom. You get a very fragile self. The sentence landed hard because that was almost exactly what Elon had become. He avoided cold, avoided waiting, avoided awkwardness, avoided effort, avoided empty space. Life had become easier on the surface, but inside he had lost structure. Your life right now, Cale said, is like something wrapped in bubble wrap. Safe, soft, convenient. But if you stay wrapped too long, you forget that you were built to withstand weather. The rain softened, They kept moving. On the way down, Kale deliberately chose the longer route. Steeper, less comfortable. Elin felt irritated all over again. They were already wet, already tired. Why make it harder? As if hearing the thought, Kale said, "What you need right now is not more comfort. What you need is to choose a little hardship on purpose." That sentence stayed with Elin. Choose a little hardship on purpose, not as punishment, not as self-harm, not as performance, but as a refusal to design his life as a frictionless slide. A few days later, Kale sent him a message. It said only this: "Be one of the 2%. Below it was a photo. On one side, an escalator. On the other, a staircase. Everyone was standing on the escalator. One person was taking the stairs. Elin looked at it and suddenly understood. This was not about proving toughness. It was about refusing to let convenience train him into helplessness. From then on, he did not make one dramatic change. He just began choosing small pieces of discomfort. He took the stairs, parked farther away, stopped arranging life so that every movement would be easy. He used cold water on his face in the morning, went outside even when the weather was not perfect, let himself feel a little hunger without immediately fixing it, took off the headphones sometimes, and let the world stay unedited. At first, it was irritating. Then, after a few weeks, he noticed something strange. The small things that used to upset him started losing their power. A little waiting did not feel catastrophic. A little cold was not the end of the world. A little emptiness did not need to be filled immediately. It was as if his threshold was being reset. Later, Kale gave him another practice, weighted walking. The first time, it was just a sturdy backpack with a modest amount of weight inside. A few books, a bottle of water, 30 minutes of walking. At first, Elin thought it sounded trivial. It is just walking with a bag. But halfway through, he felt the difference. Once the weight was on his back, his body demanded honesty. His spine wanted to straighten, his core had to engage, his steps had to become cleaner. His shoulders and lower back began telling him the truth about how loosely he usually lived. Gravity forces you to find your posture, Kale said. People are not so different. A small amount of chosen weight does not destroy you. It wakes you up. That sentence stayed with him too, because he realized it was not only physical. When a person becomes used to carrying a little real weight in the body, something in the mind changes too. Not every pressure feels like a threat. Not every strain leads to escape. Not every challenge immediately triggers collapse. Strength, he began to understand, is often not a natural gift. It is just what happens when someone practices carrying. But the most surprising thing Kale gave him was not exercise. It was boredom. One day they sat by the river and did nothing. No music, no phone, no conversation. After 10 minutes, Elin felt restless all over. His hand wanted his pocket. His eyes wanted stimulation. His mind began generating excuses to end the moment. Kale looked at him and said, "You are not afraid of boredom. You are afraid that if things get quiet, you will hear yourself." That line hit harder than anything else because Elin knew it was true. He had spent years filling every gap. Music, videos, news, messages, scrolling. He had called it relaxation. Now he saw it had often been escape. Boredom is when the brain finally gets to clean the back room, Kale said. If you never let it empty out, nothing deep will ever rise. From then on, Elin gave himself 15 minutes a day, with no input, no music, no podcasts, no screen, no entertainment. He walked, or sat, or stared at nothing. At first, those 15 minutes felt unbearable. Then, slowly, they began to feel clear, not happy, clear. Questions that had been hiding in the background started surfacing. What am I actually afraid of? Why do I need comfort so quickly? How long has it been since I let myself endure even a little discomfort without immediately paying for relief? Eventually, Kale said the line that became the center of all of it. If you do not choose a little meaningful hardship for yourself, life will hand you a lot of meaningless hardship instead. That was the sentence that changed the shape of everything. Because Elon finally understood. Taking the stairs is a small hardship. Weighted walking is a small hardship. Not checking the phone right away is a small hardship. Sitting in silence is a small hardship. All of these are small, but they are chosen. They have direction. They have dignity. They make you thicker. When you refuse all chosen difficulty, life eventually sends difficulty anyway. Only it comes without meaning. Inflammation, anxiety, fragile emotions, an inability to focus, a nervous system that panics at small things, a life that collapses under ordinary pressure. After that, Elon did not become a warrior. He still got tired, still avoided things sometimes, still wanted the easy route more often than he liked. But he started choosing small forms of resistance. Not many, just enough. And over time, he noticed something real. Life had not become easier, but life could no longer scatter him as easily as before. Years later, someone asked him where real change begins. He thought for a long time. Then he said, "The turning point was when I understood that comfort is not always a reward. Too much comfort can make a person fragile. What I really needed was a little chosen resistance." This is Otherworld Radio. Real anti-fragility does not begin when the storm arrives and you beg yourself to survive it. It begins much earlier. It begins when you choose small, meaningful forms of discomfort. So your body, your will, and your mind do not get softened by convenience. When you start designing those small, purposeful hardships, your life stops being led by cheap pleasure, and slowly, it begins growing. The capacity to carry weight,